So we're at lesson number 10, Finding Your True Purpose, and lesson 2 of part 2 of Finding Your True Purpose. So last week we talked at length about the importance of finding your true purpose by first understanding what it means to find God's purpose, finding God's purpose in creation. And when we understand what's God's purpose in creation, then we can truly understand what our purpose is as well. And so we talked last week, as you see in the review, that there are 3 concepts that we discussed as to what is the reason for God's purpose of creation. We talked number 1, to know God, and to allow God to reveal His infinite potential in order to cause that man will get to know God. And this reason, we explained, the downside of this reason is, what's the downside of this reason? That, number 1, what does it mean that God has to bring out His greatest potential? And number 2, what's relevant to our discussion is that would not fulfill its purpose in this physical world. Because it would make more sense if you say God's fulfilling His potential in the other realms, but not in a world where God is not revealed, like in this world. We're living in a world where God is not revealed. And so how can you take a realm where God is not revealed and that the creations do not know of God's existence and to say that that's the ultimate purpose so God could show His ultimate potential in a place where they may not even know of God's existence? And the same thing with concept number 2. And for that reason, we looked at what the Hasidus and Kabbala says based on the Medrash, which tells us that the reason for creation is because God wanted that there should be a dira lo yitzbarich b'tachtonim, that there should be create a dwelling place for God in the lower realms. That God had a desire to create a dwelling place for Him in the lower realms. In other words, even though the higher realms is where God is more revealed, and we talked about the different worlds, Atzilut, Beriya, Yetzira, Asiya, there's so many worlds, there's so many realms where God is more revealed, and the higher you go, the more God is revealed. But God's ultimate desire was so that there could be a dwelling place for God in the lower realms, not in the higher realms. And we talked at length, what does it mean, the desire? What's the reason for the desire? And we explained that if there's a reason for this desire, then you're automatically going away from what the ultimate reason is. Because the reason takes away from the essential explanation of something. When you really want something, when you're going to put that into reason, then putting that into reason automatically loses your true desire for that. You may give explanations for it, you may give reasons for it, but you lose what is the ultimate purpose for it. For example, if you want to, what is something that you want to do? You want to go to Israel. And you say, why do I want to go to Israel? I want to go to Israel because I really want to go to Israel. But then you start explaining, well, what are some things that I want to do there? I want to, I want to visit Masada, and I want to visit the Western Wall, and I want to see some places that I haven't seen. So these are already reasons that you're bringing about, which is now, the more you bring it into reason, the more you're concealing your desire. Because now, the more you say, I want it because of something, the more you're saying that it's not anymore my desire. That's taking away from the ultimate reason of your desire to go. In other words, if you're going to say that it's because I want to see the Western Wall, then it's already not about me. It's already about seeing the Western Wall. It's already about something external in this example. If someone is hungry and they have a desire to eat, so you may say, what am I? I'm hungry. Some may say, well, because I really want to taste the lox and bagels. But that's not really the reason. The real reason is because you're hungry, and you're just bringing that out in a certain way. So this is what we explained. We said that in order to create a dwelling place for God, that God has a desire to have a dwelling place for Him in the lower realms. So now we're going to take this and we're going to translate it into our being. God said, Genesis 1:26, God said, "Let us make man with our image and likeness." God created man in His image. In the image of God He created man, male and female He created them. The Talmud says, "For this reason was man created single, in order to teach us that one person is equivalent to an entire world." In other words, God is saying that man is a reflection of God, and so man is going to fulfill God's ultimate purpose and God's ultimate desire. And that's why man was created as a singular, that he's equivalent to the entire world. So God's desire is for man, it's for the creation of the world, and within the creation of the world is the creation of man. Yes?
Is that where they got that saying? I don't remember who said it, but if you save one person, you're saving the world?
100%. Well, it's connected to this idea as well.
Who said that?
That's from the Talmud too.
Yeah, I remember seeing that somewhere.
So what do we get from here? That we have to see ourselves as the very ultimate purpose of creation. While it's true that God wanted a dwelling place for God in the lower realms, but within creation itself, where is the ultimate purpose of creation is within man. Because man is the one who is using creation to bring about God's purpose within that creation. So to illustrate this, we're going to look at a story from the Talmud. I think, today people are desperate to find purpose in life. Today people are overcome with anxiety, with anger, with depression. People are on all types of things to help them out. We just heard recently the president coming out with the opioid crisis. And where does it ultimately start from? Well, there are chronic mental illnesses, and we're not denying that. But in many cases, it starts from a lack of a person finding their purpose in life.
The culture is being turned around. There's a lack of values, of morals, of
Exactly.
ethics.
Lack of value, lack of morals. And what does that all stem from? It all stems from one point, which is lack of purpose. What is my real purpose on earth? And when we see what our purpose is, when we see and we recognize what our true purpose is, then we can appreciate our life. There's reason to live. What are we here for on this earth? One of the greatest teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, is that there's an ongoing creative process. Which means, unlike what many philosophers learn, that God created the world and then allowed the world to exist on its own. God said, here's the world, I'm going to create it, now I'm going to back off and let things run and help themselves. But the Baal Shem Tov teaches us that no. God created the world and it's an ongoing creation process. How do you know that that's the way it is? Because if a person creates something, let's say an artist is going to draw a beautiful picture or create a beautiful building. So what's happening is that they are taking something existent and creating something from it, from something existent. It's like they say when there are a bunch of scientists that got together and said that we're going to create man. And God says, okay, create man. And so they start putting together some clay. And God says, no, you need to create the clay to create man. So when you're taking something, when you're creating something, you are taking something already existent and bringing that into existence. Whereas with the creation of the world, the creation is coming from what's referred to as ex nihilo, from a non-existence to an existence, at least a physical existence. And that has to come constantly with God's constant energy pumping that in. And we talked about this at length in some of the previous classes. But the point over here is that God is constantly putting energy into the world, and it's the purpose of man to now take that energy and to reveal the godliness within everything in the world. So now we're going to read this Talmud, very enigmatic Talmud. And it's a story of when Moses went to get the Torah at Mount Sinai. And it's a very strange story that's talked about there. It says, when Moses went up to heaven, the angel said to God, "What is a human being doing amongst us?" So he said to them, "He has come to receive the Torah." So they said to him, "This hidden treasure, which was hidden for you for 974 generations before the world was created, you wish to give it to flesh and blood?" He said, "Place your glory in the heavens." And this goes back to our points earlier. If you want to say God's revelation, where is God's ultimate revelation? It's in heaven. Like the first two concepts that we pointed out. When you want to say God revealing his ultimate potential, should be in heaven. So God says, I'm not going to answer the angels. I want Moses to answer. Because Moses is the one that it's the ultimate purpose with man. So I want man to answer the angels. Said Moses, "Master of the universe, the Torah that you are giving to me, what is written in it? I am the Lord your God who has taken you out of the land of Egypt. Have you been brought down to Egypt?" asked Moses of the angels. "Have you been enslaved to Pharaoh?" And of course, the answer is no. What else does it say? "You should have no alien gods. Do you dwell amongst idol-worshipping nations? Remember the day of Shabbos. Do you work? Do not swear falsely. Do you do business? Honor your father and mother. Do you have parents? Do not kill. Do you commit adultery? Do not steal. Do not steal. Is there jealousy between you? Do you have an evil inclination?" So, what is Moses telling them? Moses is not simply telling them that it's a technicality, that the Torah is talking about things that you don't have a relationship to. It's not just simply a technicality, that it's not about you, because the Torah is in higher realms as well. But the point that Moses is telling them is that where is the ultimate purpose of the Torah? The ultimate purpose is to be brought in a physical world. You see, they were coming with a complaint. Their complaint was, there is no place for God's greatest gift of Torah. It should be brought in the greatest, highest realms. That's where the greatest revelation of God should become about, where God is revealed, where we know God, where we see God. How can you put God's Torah into a place where there's no godly revelation? So what is Moses answering them? Moses is answering them, it's true that you have God more revealed, but we have God more with the ultimate purpose. You may see God more. You may be revealed more. But where is God's essence? Where is God's ultimate purpose? It's here. And what are the examples that he said? What is God's ultimate purpose? God says, take you out of Egypt. It's not simply a technicality that happened that the Jewish people went to Egypt and then came out of Egypt. Part of the purpose of creation is so that we should go down to Egypt and so that we should elevate the land of Egypt by being there. And so they're saying, Moses is telling them, you cannot go down to Egypt and elevate it because you cannot go to Egypt. How can you be the ones to bring God's revelation to Egypt if you don't have this concept of Egypt? Only a human being who has this idea of being bound down, or being chained down, or being stuck in a outside force that's keeping them enslaved, only a human being has this problem. An angel doesn't have this problem. When you want to bring about God's ultimate purpose, when you talk about what is the reason for creation, the reason for creation is so that we should be able to change and elevate this world, this physical world where you don't see God's presence, and bring about that revelation there. But an angel doesn't have that. An angel doesn't have the issue that he doesn't have God's revealed being.
Right. In the physical world, the Torah is the heavenly guidance to those who live in the physical world. It gives them the culture, the structure, the appreciation, the fact that they were slaves.
Yes, the Torah, the Torah is our guide for that. Yes, that is correct.
My question, is why would the angels take that position? Why would they say it's our Torah when if they read it, they would see that it's written for?
Right. So this is why I'm trying to bring out the deeper explanation here, which is it's not simply that the angels didn't know what was written in the Torah. The angels knew what was written in the Torah. What their argument is not simply about whether we can relate to what's written in the Torah or not. That's not what the argument is. The argument is, can you say that that the ultimate purpose of Torah is to be brought down to this lowly world? Can you say that is the ultimate purpose of Torah? Torah has to have a higher reason and a higher purpose. And so the angels is where the ultimate purpose is, because the angels is where you see God's ultimate revelation. And Moses is telling them, you're right, that you guys have God's revealed, God being revealed the most in your realm. But you don't have the purpose by you. You don't have the ultimate purpose of creation by you. Because the ultimate purpose of creation is when it's going down into the lowly realms. When you're taking down the examples that he gives, going down or you're enslaved in Egypt. It's not only about a story of the Jewish people being enslaved in Egypt and the angels didn't have the story happen to them. It's the concept of being enslaved to an outside force, being enslaved to a force that is not only not holiness, but is completely the opposite of holiness. Completely stands out for everything that godliness does not. Completely stands against everything that godliness lives for. That's Pharaoh. Pharaoh is the ultimate opposite of what everything that godliness stands for. He says Pharaoh believed himself to be a god. And you're saying that here you have these individuals that God is enslaving into the ultimate opposite of everything that godliness and holiness stands for. An angel cannot be enslaved like that. Only a human being can. In this sense, the Jewish people. God is telling Moses, or Moses is saying, where you're coming from, you're right that you have more revealed godliness in your realm, but you don't have the ultimate purpose by you. Because the ultimate purpose is that God wants a human being to come down, to be enslaved to Pharaoh, and to come out from there a freed man. In other words, a higher man, one that has changed the world around him. The other examples as well. What are the other examples? We have you shall know of alien gods, which is again the same idea. Not just technically that they don't worship idols, but it's the concept that they don't have the idea of something that is non-godly. Idolatry means that you believe that there is an existence outside of God's being. Only in this world where God is concealed can such an existence, can you have such a concept. Where God being concealed and to believe that there is a alien God, so to speak. Only in this world can that be. The angels, it doesn't exist. And Moses is telling them not just, oh, well, this mitzvah is not in your realm. It may exist in your realm, but the point is that you don't have this ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose is that we should be in a place where God is concealed, where there could be the concept of an alien foreign God, and still you overcome that. That is what the purpose of creation is. The same thing with Shabbos. What's the point of Shabbos? Point of Shabbos is that you have a work week, and then you're stopping everything of your work week, stopping everything which is worldly, and saying, now I'm going to make this a godly day. So we're taking a physical, worldly day and saying we're turning it into something holy. In a realm where everything is holy, you don't have this concept of taking something that's mundane and making it holy, which is essentially what Shabbos is, taking a day, which is a work day, and saying, no, now there's no more work. Now we're going to make it from a mundane day to a holy day, which is Shabbos. And so the core of all the mitzvah performance is to take the material creation and to utilize it for a divine purpose. And then this achieves the harmony of the individual and the world at large. And this, by the way, is why Judaism is not limited to the synagogue. But the Torah has things that encompass everything in our lives. The Torah has things that encompass how we eat, how we sleep, how we work, how we go to bed, how we wake up. Everything Torah has guidelines for. Because if it were only about living life in a synagogue, then that would defeat the purpose. Because the ultimate purpose is about how you are able to bring godliness into the physical realm where God is concealed. Where is God most concealed? Where you eat, where you sleep, where you do work. If you're saying God is only in the synagogue, then that defeats the purpose. Of course, there's the idea of building shuls.
Yeah, but you can pray anywhere in Judaism. You can pray by yourself. You don't need to go to a synagogue to pray.
Yes, exactly what I'm saying. Obviously, there is a concept of a shul and a synagogue and a holy place, and I'm not.
Well, that's later on, though. Those are cultural developments after the destruction of the temple.
That is also true. So here you have an interesting thing, this question and answer. This was from Notes from Conversations with the Rebbe in 1952. What happened was in the 50s and 60s, the Rebbe would invite in college students. At that time, Kabbala on campus was almost non-existent. And so he would personally invite groups of college students into his private study, and they were allowed to ask any questions that they wanted, anything. They can ask anything they want. I mean, obviously Judaism related, but there were fascinating conversations. Many of them are printed online that you can see. They asked things about faith, they asked things about Holocaust, they asked things about kosher, about all types of concepts, and they were answered. So there's this one student there, and he says, what is the purpose of life? This young college student. Was it he, she? I don't know if it was. So what is the purpose, in Hebrew, tachlis, of life? So the Rebbe answered, to bring light, in Yiddish, lichtigkeit, into the world. So that student, I guess, was not going to just take such a simple answer, which if you think about is actually a very, very deep answer, but brought down into most simple words. It basically sums up everything that we're saying in one line, but it's a very, very deep line. You have to understand what this means. So this student goes on and asks, what is the purpose of light? You're telling me that the purpose of life is to bring light into the world. So I guess the student was a smart student, wasn't going to take that as an answer. It says, so if so, what is the purpose of light, of Lichtigkeit? The Rebbe answered them that the purpose of light is to find a harmonious life. One can only be in complete harmony when he has reached the truth. So the student went on to ask further. All right, so let's read that one more time. The purpose of light is to find a harmonious light. One can only be in complete harmony when he has reached the truth. What is the greatest issue that people have which brings them down in life? Is that they're living a life of darkness. What does it mean a life of darkness? They don't have truth. They can't find their real purpose. They're lost. So then that student goes on to ask, how does one know that he has found the purpose? So he answered him, when one has light, then he will have found the purpose. A person cannot feel that which he lacks. One looks for what he does not possess. If he had what he was lacking for, he would not search.
Very good answer.
And this is a very, very powerful discussion, which is why I thought to share it with you. This sums up so many things in just a very, very simplistic way, but such a deep, deep concepts. Taking this idea and bringing it all, summing it up into just a few lines. You want to know what is the purpose of light? The purpose of light is to bring light into the world. Okay. So you're saying to bring light into the world. What is the purpose of light? And so he says, light means that you are finding the truth, that you are finding your ultimate, that you are finding the ultimate purpose of who you really are. A harmonious life. When someone is lacking that, they feel constantly lost. They feel constantly they're missing something. When someone has reached the truth, then their life is different. Then the life is different. It's the ultimate purpose is finding the light. And so this is what it means, is to find your ultimate purpose. There's an old parable that they say. There's once a poor man who heard that in a faraway land you can, if you're able to get there or travel the deep sea, it's a land that's full of diamonds. Diamonds all over. They're plentiful as dust. I'm sure you may have heard this parable before. So he goes on this long, treacherous journey, comes with sacks and sacks of diamonds, and gets off the ship at this island. He starts filling up, and he sees it's true. There's diamonds all over the streets. The stone, it's like dust. The same way we hear grass, he sees diamonds. So he starts picking it up and filling up his bags. Someone comes over to him, says, "Sir, what are you doing?" He says, "What do you mean? You guys have diamonds here. This is incredible." And the individual says, "So, what's diamonds? Diamonds is nothing. Diamonds is dust." He says, What do you mean?" He says that over here, what's very important to us is chicken fat. That's really, really important, and that's what everyone uses as currency. Because over here we're not able to get chickens. If you're able to get a hold of it, then you. Anyway, so to make a long story short, so he starts collecting this chicken fat. He becomes a millionaire. He becomes very wealthy, and he has all this pile loads of this chicken fat, and he's able to buy everything in the world that he has. And he finally comes home with these loads and loads of this chicken fat, and he comes back home, and he shows people, "Look how rich I am." They say, "What do you mean rich? What is this?" He says, well, that I have the greatest currency. And of course, they tell him, what do you mean? You were in a place that you could have been collecting diamonds, and here that's what you were collecting. And of course, this is a parable for a soul that comes down into this world. We come down into a world where you don't see godliness revealed. We don't see what our ultimate purpose is. God puts us in a place that's dark. God puts us in a place that's we don't see really what we have. We live in such an incredible environment, such an incredible realm, that the higher realms are jealous of us. They wish that we could be there. By the way, that's one of the reasons on a yard site that you do different things. You say Kaddish, you study, you give charity in honor of someone, you dedicate something in honor of someone, because when there's a soul in the higher realm, that soul is no longer able to do mitzvahs, no longer able to do Torah and mitzvahs. So the actions that we do in this world are by their relatives or friends or whoever it is, that elevates the soul as if the soul is doing those deeds as well, because the soul is no longer able to do so. So we lose our we lose our focus, we lose our reason, we lose our value of what we have because we don't see the revelation. Now, Yom Yom, it's brought down that what all the angels would give up, just to answer to a Kaddish, Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba Mavarach, which we answer on a Kaddish, to answer Amen to a Kaddish. All the angels wish that they can do that. Why? Because we live in a realm where God says that my ultimate purpose is to make a dwelling place in the lower realms. Remember last time we gave an example. We said it's like saying you have a black hole. Instead of living in a mansion, I want to live in a hole in the ground. Remember we gave that example. But this is what God wants. And God says that this is where my ultimate place is, in a place that's dark, in a place that's concealed. I want that this is where you should be able to reveal God's presence. So now you ask a question. This is a question that many people ask. Well, how do I know what my purpose in the world is? You say what our general purpose, so we have to do Torah, we have to do mitzvahs, but where do I fit in? Where do I fit into this broad scheme of this whole world? Millions of people, everybody doing so many different things. Where do I fit in, and how do I know that I am fulfilling my purpose? Then you can say, yes, you have to do Torah and mitzvahs, and yes, that's how you fulfill your purpose. But is there a way that I can know about what my particular purpose in this world is? Is there a way that I can know why specifically God wanted me to be here? For what reason God says that you were created as an individual? And for that I want to look at the next text. King David writes, "The steps of man are directed by God." The Baal Shem Tov, the 18th century founder of the Hasidic movement, explained this verse in the following manner. Although we go about our daily tasks at what seems to be our own initiative and will, our steps are guided for a spiritual and loftier purpose. And this is something you should know that has been very much debated in the Kabbalistic world. There's been a debate in the Kabbalistic world as to how much is God's involvement in the individual. How much does God get involved in every individual's life? How important are your actions and deeds? So there are those Kabbalists that believe and that were of the opinion that God created the world and then let it run on its own. Some say that God continues to create the world, but does not get involved with every individual detail of one's life. In other words, the general things, the important decisions, yes. It's like you say, my wife makes the important decisions, and I make the I'm sorry, how does it go? My wife makes the small decision and I make the big decisions. My wife makes the small decisions like what we have to eat for dinner, where we have to go out, what we have to do, where the kids have to go to school. And I make the big decisions, like I have to decide who's going to become president. I have to decide who should be the new mayor of the town. I have to decide, where the next big meeting should be held. So the big decisions God makes, but the small decisions that we make. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, and by the way, we're going to talk more about this in the course, about the debate with the Baal Shem Tov and the others, and some of the other things that they debated in the course, the great debates of Jewish history. One of them is about the Baal Shem Tov and the Hasidic movement. There was a lot of opposition to the Baal Shem Tov, but one of the fundamental teachings of the Baal Shem Tov was the concept that every single individual is created by man, and not only that, but that every individual's actions is led by God. And we're going to see soon how much more that goes even further, is what I'm going to explain soon. But what do we get from here? That when we end up in a place, we may have a thought or a reason why we go there. We may figure that I moved to the villages because there's good golf courses, because there's good retirement. We may end up in different places because we think so, but ultimately it's really because God has led us here. There was once a woman that was going to a convention in Detroit, and it was a women's convention, Chabad women's convention, and she had written back to the Rebbe a list of everything that had transpired. And what happened was there was a snowstorm, and she ended up getting stuck in Detroit for the weekend. And so she wrote that I got stuck in Detroit because of the snowstorm. And so he told her to cross out the word stuck. There's no such thing as getting stuck. You're there because God wants you to be there. You think that it's because it was a snowstorm that you were there, but it wasn't. You're not meant to be there. You were meant to be there. But God leads people in the right direction. But the problem is that although man is led in the right direction, there is one thing that God doesn't do for you, and that's what we're going to read in the next text. As sages stated, everything is from the hands of heaven except fear of heaven. This meant that whatever happens to a person is from heaven. The particular time and place a person lives, and his station in life, whether rich or poor, etc., is decided from above. A person's only contribution is the fear of heaven, which is his reaction in any given situation. So God leads an individual where they're meant to go. So wherever you go, it's because you're meant to be there at that moment, at that time, at that particular place. However, the hard part, what's the hard part? The hard part is that you have to now make a move. God says, I put you there, now you have to make the move.
You have to take advantage of where God put you.
Exactly. It's like, I put the horse by the water, but the horse has to go drink. If you're put in a particular situation, you have to take advantage of that situation and say, what would God want me to do here? Why would I be here? And you have to do something with it. You never know. You never know.
can definitely relate to that most of my life.
I'm sure you've traveled all over the world
Well,
with
not
all
only
your...
that, different situations have come up where all of a sudden I'm in a situation and I have to do something. Okay, I was on active duty for 3 months. I was a second lieutenant, brand new. Didn't have any training, nothing. Just what they taught me up where I was at. 3 months, I became second in command. Okay?
You see?
So there's an opportunity. What do?
Right.
Okay? I had a master sergeant who was old enough to be my father. I sat him down and told him he was going to be my teacher. And that if I got out of line, he could close the doors and correct me, and he had my word on it that there would be no repercussions. He stuck his hand out and he accepted. He says, "I'm going to do that, Lieutenant." And then 7.5 months later, I was in command, again with no training.
You see?
Right?
So
Because-
God had put you there for a reason.
Well, the captain who left, there was somebody who had more years but was lower in rank. He picked me because he said I had more leadership ability with the troops. I had 160 men under command. I was just fresh out of college.
Right.
Okay, so they put me in charge. They didn't write it down because that's another story, the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
But I commanded during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it was and these sergeants and airmen helped me. Okay, so I went in. The door opened. I went through, but I let everybody show me things. And what those guys taught me in 3 years have lasted me a lifetime.
You see?
Because
So,
you
Okay,
teach-
but this
because
makes
he's
the
teachable.
point.
There you go.
He's teachable.
And I think, and there are other situations where I think God guided me, but I had to take advantage.
Right. So very good. So a very good example of this idea. And I obviously you were probably shocked at that moment, saying, "What do you mean? How did I become commander? I'm not a commander." And yet God had put you there for a reason, and then you have to take
Well,
advantage of that.
That was the reaction.
And so this is, you know, people always ask, okay, so how do I know what God wants of me? And the answer is, how do you know what God wants of you? Because God will put you in a situation where He wants something of you. So, what do you make of it? Well, that's up to you, what you make of it. You know that you have to do something that is within the realm, obviously, of the teachings of the Torah. You have to do something which is in the realm of teaching and inspiring others. You have to do something which is within the realm of reaching out to another individual, of doing something good, of doing something kind, of doing something just, etc. So this is where we have so we talked about what is the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to reveal God's in this realm, to bring God down into this physical realm, and to reveal, not to bring God down, but to reveal God's essence of how God is within this physical world. That even though God had created a world where He is concealed, but God says that I want to have a world, like we said in the beginning, in order to make a dwelling place for God in the lower realms. That this was God's desire, to have a dwelling place in the lower realms. In the lower realms where it's dark, where it's hidden, where it's concealed, where there are forces of evil, where there are forces of negativity, where there are forces of darkness. And what is our job? The job of the ultimate purpose is to bring light, to bring lichtigkeit, to bring a little bit of light into our world around us. Now, how do I know what is meant for me personally? What is my ultimate purpose? So for that, you have to look at your life and see, where is God guiding me as an individual? Where is God taking me? Why am I going there? Now, sometimes you may not be sure about why or what. Sometimes you have to talk to someone in order to make the right decisions. But ultimately, the decisions that we make in those places is up to us.
I have
Then,
one
yeah.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Where does waiting for the Messiah come to, Mashiach come in?
Oh, so that is the ultimate, which I wanted to get to, but we'll bring that out now.
Oh,
The ultimate. So what is Mashiach ultimately? The idea of Mashiach is that the entire world will reveal the godliness within this world. In other words, when all the generations have brought about, each generation you reveal God's presence more and more. And when the ultimate revelation of godliness in this world comes about, that is the meaning of Mashiach.
can you repeat that?
Mashiach, the time of Mashiach, is a time period which we've been striving for to reach over 6,000 years, is when the ultimate revelation of God comes about in this world. In other words, when the world itself will perceive that its true existence is godliness. And we could have a whole nother class at some time about how that's actually playing out and the incredible things that are happening in this world around us, with the breakthroughs of science and medicine and so many areas where God's presence becomes more and more revealed on a regular basis.
Yeah, but then I think in terms of like people that, like the jihadists who just want to kill us.
Okay, we still haven't reached that point yet where everybody, but when the world is a world of harmony where that is ultimately revealed, then that comes out. Now the final point here, with regards to man's steps created by God, the steps of man directed by God, the final point is that it says in a Yom Yom. In other words, until now we said that what? That God directs man and allows that man to see where your purpose is, where and how and what place your purpose is, and then your job is to now use that opportunity, that place where you were put, to now use that moment for whatever reason it is. But there's more. And this is the final text here. Whoever has faith in individual divine providence meaning that the individual, that God is involved with the individual details of every person's life. So he knows that when we say man's steps are established by God, which we read earlier from Psalms 37, that this particular soul must purify and improve something specific in a particular place. But it's more than that. For centuries, or even since the world's creation, that which needs purification or improvement waits for the soul to come and purify to improve it. The soul too has been waiting ever since it came into being for its time to descend so that it can discharge the tasks of purification and improvement assigned to it. Let me explain what we just read. What we just read is not only is it that God directs steps of man so that man can fulfill his purpose, but number one, this soul has been waiting since the very beginning of creation in order to fulfill that particular purpose that it was created for. That's step number one. But step number two is the flip side. And that is that which is being purified and improved, in other words, that element in the world that this soul is improving and purifying and elevating, has been waiting since the very beginning of creation for this particular soul to do its mission and its purpose to elevate that place and that time in creation. So in other words, God created like this. If you were to look at it like this, that the world was one big massive puzzle. Huge, huge puzzle. And the only difference is that the puzzles have to move themselves once they're put in place. You have to actually connect yourself. In other words, so God is putting you in your spot in the puzzle and connecting you. And now you have to connect yourself to your spot in the puzzle. But what we're essentially reading here now, how even more than what the Baal Shem Tov says, is that your part in the puzzle that you're playing is relevant to the entire creation of the world and to the entire creation of all being, of all mankind, and of all and of all creations. Because your particular soul is waiting for this particular moment to elevate something and some time and some place that has waited since the very creation of the world to be elevated. So your soul has been waiting since the very beginning of creation to elevate something that has been waiting since the very beginning of creation to be elevated. It's like a story, the Baal Shem Tov, they say that the Baal Shem Tov once took a trip with his students. And they came in the middle of the forest, the middle of nowhere. And he says, okay, this is where we're stopping. There were no people there, there were no houses there, there was nothing. They're in the middle of nowhere. They couldn't understand. Normally, he takes them on a trip, he takes them to a house to go see someone, to go meet someone, some reason, some purpose. Over here, they're literally in the middle of the forest, they didn't understand. And he points out to a stream of water that was flowing, and he tells one of his students, go fill up a cup of water. So he went over and filled up a cup of water from the stream, and he tells him, make a blessing, and drink the water. He made a blessing, Shakol, Yabid Baro, drank the water. Baal Shem Tov said, okay, now we can go back. So what's going on here? Baal Shem Tov said that this stream of water has been waiting since the very beginning of creation, that your soul should come and drink this water and make a blessing on it. So the Baal Shem Tov was able to see that this stream was waiting for that moment, and that this soul was waiting for that moment. So he made the shidduch together, sort of. We don't always see it, but God arranges that we end up in a place. In other words, the point is that it's not only the purpose that we as man or as human have to do in this particular place, but it's that particular place or thing that we are elevating has been waiting since the very beginning of creation to be elevated through that soul which elevates it, or which purifies it, or which improves it, or however you want to say it.
So now that stream of water was blessed.
So now that stream of water was blessed through that soul that was meant to bless it. But the point is that stream of water was waiting since the creation for this individual to come and make a blessing. And the same is true with every single person, and every single time, and every single place. We all have the places that God leads us in different places, for different reasons. But it's not only that we have to elevate that, but it's that which we're elevating has been waiting for our soul to come there and elevate it at that specific particular time. Sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we can recognize what our purpose is. Something will happen, we'll meet someone, we'll find someone. Sometimes we don't know. You can have people for years and years, they never know how they've affected someone or something. I've met people who have come to me. I met them here. And they say 60, 70 years ago, they met a bacher, a yeshiva student in a street in Manhattan on a mitzvah tank. And he had put on tefillin with him for the first time, and that's why he decided to come back. 40, 50, 60 years later. This yeshiva student has no idea what he did. He has no idea that he met the person. He wouldn't even know that he met the person. How many times do you walk in the street and someone does something and you take note of what was done, and the individual has no idea? You don't know who that person is. They don't know who you are. They don't even know that you saw them. There were two yeshiva students in the early years. Before there were so many Chabad houses, so there were they used to send out yeshiva students to different towns throughout rural America. Today, most of these towns have full-time Chabad houses. Back then, there were very few. So there were two yeshiva students. They went out in the summertime, and back then, you didn't have a phone where you could search. You had to go search the phone book and see if you could find a Jewish name in the town. You find someone, I found a Greenberg. All right, let me go and call this guy Greenberg, and then you find out, no, it's a black guy named Greenberg, and then you go again, and you see maybe there's a Horowitz, and then you say, no, that's a different Horowitz, and going on and on. There were these two students who were they're in this town. They could not find not one Jew in town, not one. And they came back depressed. They couldn't find anyone. They couldn't find anyone, and they felt very bad. They felt like they had failed themselves. They were sent to do something. They were supposed to find a Jew in town. They couldn't find that one Jew in town. They came back to New York, and they were feeling down about what had happened. That Shabbos was a Farbrengen. The Rebbe was holding a Farbrengen where he would talk and discuss about different issues. And he said there were two students who were going into town, and they thought that they didn't accomplish anything. But meanwhile, what happened was there was an individual who was looking from his apartment window and saw that there were two students walking with a yarmulke and a tzitzis. And this man remembered his grandmother and his grandfather, that his grandfather walked with a yarmulke and tzitzis too. His grandmother was a Jewish grandmother. And he was inspired because he saw these two yeshiva students walking in the street. They thought that they accomplished nothing. They said, what are we here for? We're walking in the street and there's no one. We did not meet not one single Jew. Meanwhile, this Jew saw them, and that inspired him, and that changed his entire life. So, sometimes you know and sometimes you don't. But the main thing is that we have to constantly do our part to do as the Torah tells us and to try and keep in that way. And so everything is the hands of heaven except for fear of heaven. The fear of heaven, in other words, the choices that we make, God gives us free choice. Free choice is given to man. We have the opportunity to decide the situation where we're given, what are we going to do with that opportunity given to us? Are we going to use it out for a good reason, or God forbid, for something else? And so, when we talk about what is finding your purpose, so what is it, finding your purpose? Finding your purpose is to see for yourself, why were you created? God created you to bring light, to bring godliness, to bring holiness into a world that is full of darkness, into a world that has concealment, where God is not revealed. And then you say, well, what is my personal purpose? My personal purpose is that I should find wherever God has put me in that situation, in that time, in that place, and use it for a good reason and for a good purpose. And ultimately, as was pointed out before, that when the culmination of all the souls doing their parts together, that is when you have the ultimate, which is the coming of Mashiach. And may it be speedily in our days.
Amen.
So, I'm gonna conclude here with this.